Hello, thank you everyone for tuning in to the Urban Network podcast. I'm your host, Hewitt Pagenstecher, and the founder of Amygdala Media. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Nasya Kamrat, who is the CEO and co-founder of Faculty, which is a Portland-based immersive experience and storytelling agency that merges technology, storytelling, strategy, and content to create bespoke, human-centric experiences. Nasya is also a large part of Komuna, which is a minority-owned cooperative of independent agencies from around the world. Nasya, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I can't wait to learn more about your business. One question I have is how did you start Faculty, or what inspired you to start this business? And tell me a little bit about your background as well.
Totally. So I started Faculty about a decade ago, be a decade in February. And I, prior to that, was at big agency land. So I worked at some of the largest agency holding companies. And at some point, I was there for quite some time. And at some point, I realized that sort of my values and what I wanted to do weren't sort of being realized as sort of a larger agency network. And so I left and I shopped around at sort of smaller shops and bigger shops and realized that wherever I went, the great creative ideas, great storytelling was sort of always getting lost to the bottom line and sort of reaching that bottom line. And so I met my business partner at a small design firm. We knew each other for about a month before I was like, hey, want to do this? And he said yes, which is crazy. And then 10 years later, here we are, and we sort of evolved and grown and changed, obviously, with the times, but the sort of essence of the company, which is to create sort of really interesting, sort of story-driven, technology-focused work, is sort of at our core.
Yeah, no, that's really inspiring. I have a marketing kind of branding agency myself, so it's really cool to see what businesses and agencies look like when they are able to work with some of the largest businesses and employ a lot of people as well. One thing that it says on your website that Faculty does is spatial storytelling. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means and what that is?
Totally. So for us, spatial storytelling is sort of bringing together really incredible storytelling, designed experiences, and technology to create sort of human-centric experiences within a space, within an actual physical space, or more commonly than not these days, a digital space as well. So we do a lot within physical space. We do a lot of permanent installations or pop-up installations or activations for brands. And we are doing quite a bit of sort of virtual spaces as well, whether that be sort of events or playing in some of the more virtual worlds that are really popular right now.
Nice. So I'm always curious how people get their start, because a lot of a big element of starting a business is getting that very first client, right? So I'm curious, who was your first client or Faculties, and how did you start working with them?
So our first client, I'm trying to remember our very first client. I don't know if I can remember our very first client. It's a long time ago. But we did a lot of work. When we first started, we did a lot of work for the bigger agencies. So large holding companies would hire us to do content creation and stuff like that. We had some direct to client stuff. We worked with Columbia University on a few things. We worked with Gallup on a few things. But it wasn't until a couple of years in where we started working with Holland America Line, which is a cruise line, is a division of Carnival, where we started working with them really regularly, and that sort of really changed the trajectory of our company in a lot of ways, because I don't know, it's going on 7 or 8 years now that we've been working with them, and we do a lot of the experiences on their ship. We work with their marketing department, we work with their entertainment department, and that was our sort of first not sort of project-based client that we got, was sort of with a longer-term relationship. So that really was sort of where the company shifted and changed. But the very first client was probably, I don't even know, some small little product or app that we found somehow is my guess, because we were being pretty scrappy early on.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it could be hard to remember when you're working with a lot of people a decade ago. Who are some of the most maybe notable and recognizable clients that you're working with today, fast forward 10 years?
So we're still working with Holland America Line, which is really exciting, and we do ton of stuff for them. Really, really good client and really great partners and friends actually at this point, since we've been working for them for so long. We are working with Puma actually right now on a holiday activation. Can't really tell you too much more about that because it's coming up, but that will be launching at the end of November. So we're really excited about that. A couple other things on the horizon. We're also working with a software as a medical device, which is launching next week. So we did all of the sort of branding and sort of everything to help them get towards launch for this new software as a medical device in the autism space. So that will be launching next week as well, which is really exciting. And so yeah, so those are a few, but we have lots of big clients, lots of sort of smaller stuff as well, and sort of always trying to keep it different and interesting. So we are always having something new to work on, which is really exciting.
That is exciting. And, congratulations on all your growth and success as an agency. A lot of our listeners are business owners, maybe smaller business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs. And so I'm curious, like, what is some key advice that you might have for entrepreneurs or agency owners who are trying to scale their agency?
I think my best advice is like you will 100% screw up a lot. Like you will definitely make mistakes and you will make a lot of mistakes. And I think if you learn from them and grow from them and try to like sort of always sort of push them, you don't push past them. I think when I first started the agency, every time we had a miss, like I took it really personally, but it wasn't. It was just sort of this like the idea of growth, right? Of how things happen, or and then the world happens around you, like a global pandemic. When you're in a sort of spatial storytelling agency, it was a pretty big hit to the business at first. And so I think just sort of being really attuned to sort of what's happening in the world, what's happening with your team and your employees and your leadership team, and your clients. It's all about relationship building. So, every person you talk to is a potential partner or client or future employee. And so I think really just sort of knowing that all business is based off of that. So I think, yes, you'll definitely mess up and sort of enjoy the ride because it will happen. And relationships are the most important thing to any business because it's the people, whether they're hiring you or they're working with you or whatever, that are really going to make or break successful business.
I couldn't agree with that more. Relationships have been so helpful with just like growing my own network. This podcast, the Urban Network podcast, actually coincides with a networking group that's monthly called Urban Network. And that's like a networking group I've been like co-organizing for a couple of years. And just getting involved in like different groups and communities and, conversations has just been so like instrumental in like just like growing my business and like meeting new people. So
100%.
I couldn't agree more. So one of the main things that you do that you mentioned is these immersive experiences, these spatial storytelling events. Can you tell me a little bit about, or give me an example of a recent one that you've done that, you're really proud of?
Totally. Sort of an ongoing one that we've been working on for a couple of years now and are continuing to work on is for Holland America Line. We are doing something called EXC Talks, which are basically it's like a TED Talk and a Broadway show and a documentary film have like media baby and it exploded on a stage. So basically you have like a live speaker and you have these massive screens with graphics and live action film. And they basically tell the stories of the places that the cruise line sails, so all the ports that it goes to. So we have stories about women of Alaska doing sort of jobs that are generally not thought of as like jobs for women, and sort of really elevating the voice of women in Alaska. We have a talk about like the history of the Caribbean as told through like a single bottle of rum. We have a talk that we're just about to launch about like the history of games. And so like if you ever want to know about like all the like board games like chess and checkers and like that type of thing. And so really kind of allowing people to get excited when they get on the ship and they're learning about the places they're about to sail to and learning about the people and the humans that they're about to meet. It's been really fascinating because we've had a lot of ability to like be super creative and like kind of like we come up with the stories. we go and we film all over the world. We do all the animations and motion graphics. We do all the installations. We do all the training for the actual speakers. And so it feels like, it's just like a really interesting project because we're always kind of doing something different. And I think there's like eventually going to be like 50 of these on board their ships. And they're like 30-minute lectures. But also we get to like actually meet really interesting people and then take that learning in those meetings and bring them to people who would not normally be able to meet those people. And so I think that's been really great because I think, I think connectivity and human connection is so important to sort of make the world a like less crappy place. And so I think this is our way of actually, connecting humans to stories that they may not hear otherwise, which has been really powerful.
Yeah, that's really phenomenal. I love how dynamic those events are. Like there's so many elements that could appeal to, a variety of people who might just have different ways of consuming like information and learning. So those actually seem like a lot of fun. And I
Yeah.
could see why you're like described as a futurist on your website, with like creating these experiences that are so like, technology and human centric, like heavy. And I am curious as someone who's a futurist, where do you see kind of the future of storytelling going from here?
Well, I think, for me, storytelling is at its essence just all about connectivity and human connection. Like someone if you know their story. And I think it allows for sort of better community, better engagement, better just sort of like human to human like understanding. And I think so like what makes storytelling powerful, I think won't change. I think people crave stories, they crave other human stories because of that connectivity. But the future of storytelling, I think, is actually really quite interesting because there's so much you can do. There's so many different ways to reach people now. And there's so many different touch points to build community. And there's so much technology that allows you to sort of connect to individuals as opposed to sort of a demographic, right? And I think that makes storytelling really interesting and really challenging as well because you're sort of talking to humans and like really finding the best way to connect with individuals, I think is interesting. So I think the future storytelling is really taking all the data that we have, taking all the technology that we have, and really finding ways to have that sort of one-to-one communication between a brand and a consumer that you can have now. And I think that's really kind of fascinating. And I think when it comes to these events or these immersive experiences, I think particularly after the couple of years that we've had where we've all been sort of stuck inside, I think people are craving going out into the world and being around other people safely and having experiences and having co-created and co-experienced experiences, right? And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves moving forward as well.
Nice. No, I appreciate that insight. And I really think storytelling is like so important for every brand and business to be able to do or to have their own story, because that's really what, has always resonated with human beings, and it kind of creates like an emotional connection to like
100%.
a business or brand.
Yeah.
So another one of the main things that you're doing is you're a large part of Komuna, right? And I'm curious like how that could help minority-owned agencies from around the world. Like, what is Komuna, and how can that help minority-owned agencies?
Yeah. So Komuna is a cooperative of independent agencies. So it actually takes the model of like a network, like a big holding company network,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of breaks it apart a little bit and gives a lot more opportunity and flexibility to our clients and the agencies who are part of the co-op. So brands can now go to Komuna and say, hey, I want this thing that has all these sort of various elements to it. And then we kind of put the best and brightest towards that, depending on the folks in our network. And I think so about a year ago, probably about a year and a half ago, I've been thinking about this idea for a while now of how do we sort of elevate underrepresented founders in the agency space. But it was, I think, a year and a half ago at the height of 2020.
Yeah.
And I was on a call with a brand. I was on with the procurement. And they said something along the lines of like, oh, we love what you do, but we can only, we're only hiring Black-owned agency partners right now. And I was like, and I'm obviously a woman, and my business partner is Taiwanese, my founding partner is Taiwanese, and yes, 100%, you should elevate Black-owned agencies and those underrepresented voices, but not at the cross section of other underrepresented founders. And so what I realized at that moment was, by sort of being in these boxes to check, we're actually not working together, right? And so if we have all the, LGBTQ plus and women and Black-owned agencies working together and working collectively towards a common goal, we're actually stronger. And so rather than having to be like this sort of silo thing, bringing all those underrepresented voices together is going to be great for brands because they get really, really best-in-class talent. We're all ex-big agency folks who start our own shops, but also allows us to sort of better support each other and not just be like a box to check or a hashtag that someone says, hey, right now, this is the thing I have to care about as a brand, so this is what we're going to do. I kind of want to like make it, no, you're getting the best talent, and we just happen to be underrepresented founders of agencies. So that's sort of what Komuna's model is, and to help other agency owners who are, competing against the bigger shops, the bigger holding companies, and giving them a support network and other services that they may not have internally, so that we can actually do better work for our clients together.
Nice. Yeah, I like how you're emphasizing kind of creating like tangible change, like really helping out, those underrepresented agencies, and not just being like something to like, check a box off. So that's phenomenal. And I'm curious how, for like the audience members listening, how can people get involved to be a part of this cooperative?
So you can totally connect with me and reach out to me directly. You can also go to our website, which is just a landing page now, but it will be a full website in a week. We're kind of officially launching at the beginning of November. So the website is komuna.agency, and you can certainly go there and fill out a form and learn more. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I am pretty vocal on LinkedIn about most things. So you can also just hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to tell you more and tell you how to become part of Komuna.
Thank you. And like also, how can people learn more about faculty and like its events?
Totally. So wearefaculty.com is our website. And, we sort of are pretty active also on socials as well. So you can certainly find me on LinkedIn and learn more about what we're doing. And if you're another agency, we're always partnering with other agencies who don't do what we do. And if you're brands on the brand side, always happy to talk to new brands and see how we can work together.
Excellent. Well, Nasya, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Before I wrap up, I want to ask if there's anything else you might want to discuss or talk about or tell the audience.
No, I'm excited to be on. Thank you for having me. I am, I'm newish here in Portland. I'm actually moved from New York about 3 years ago. So really excited to be getting more involved in the community here. I actually do have one more thing. So I do have a dinner series that I host called Wonder Woman Dinner Series. It's actually a global initiative that sort of started in New York, and I sort of run the Portland and the Seattle chapters, and they're monthly or every other month dinners where we get executive level women together to better support each other. So if you're an executive level woman and you want to have dinner with a bunch of other badass women, reach out to me as well, because we are always trying to grow that community and sort of better support other women in executive roles.
Excellent. I love everything you do to like cultivate community with like other like business owners. That's really like empowering and awesome.
Awesome.
Nasya, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome. My pleasure. And thanks for having me.
Of course. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.